Hey there, this is the Resistor Vic podcast. I'm here to get folks thinking about politics as something that's really about regular people like you and me, and to realize that together we can make a difference. I'm Vic Myers. Welcome to The Resistance. This is episode 22 of the Resistor Vic podcast, A Tale of Two Dinners. For all of you folks who voted for Trump because of America First, and for all of you folks who refuse to support Kamala Harris because of Gaza, let's talk about how that's working out for you. I mean, there's obvious examples for the America First people who are watching Trump give billions, $40 billion to Argentina and promising that they can sell more beef here. So he's putting Argentina first ahead of our farmers and our ranchers, but we knew that. And how about the oil workers? OPEC is pumping out oil like crazy, crashing oil prices, which makes it sound like we're going to have cheaper gas, right? But if you pay attention, you already know that the price of gas doesn't follow that closely with the price of oil. And all of you American oil workers who voted for Trump for America First, you're about to be out in the cold because you're going to lose your job. But don't worry, because you may end up having to get a job in the military. And by having, I say you might end up getting drafted. Because you see, Donald Trump is making all the signs of invading Venezuela. He thinks it's going to be a cakewalk. But Venezuela is not the desert. It's not Afghanistan. It's not Iraq. Not to say that those were cakewalks, but to say that it's entirely different kind of terrain. Venezuela is more like Vietnam. It's jungle territory, hills and mountains. It's not going to be a cakewalk. And if we go in there and create a quagmire, which it will be if he decides to go on a ground war there, it will be a quagmire. We also have to worry about the fact that it's only a few hours from America by plane. We have to worry about the fact that those people in Venezuela know how to travel by land to our southern border. Now, Trump's supposed to be all about border and immigration, but all of his energy on immigration has been spent on rounding up innocent people all over America. Not the lawbreakers that he promised, but just anybody with brown skin. None of that money, none of that effort has actually gone to strengthening the security at our southern border, which means when he invades Venezuela and when it gets ugly and they want some payback, they're going to bring that war to our front door. They're going to bring it through the neglected southern border. And for the people who wouldn't support Kamala because of Gaza, congratulations. If we go in on the ground, if we attack Venezuela, how do you think he's going to do it? He's going to start out with an air campaign, just like Netanyahu in Gaza. He's going to level buildings everywhere that he can find one. Buildings full of innocent women and children. He won't care if there's a hospital or a school. He's got to get his street cred up. I mean, look at his buddy Netanyahu got away with murdering thousands of innocent people, including women and children. He can't let Netanyahu be the toughest guy on the block. If we go to Venezuela, and it's looking like he wants to, we're going to have Gaza in Central America. All because of these people who voted America First and are watching America be put last. All because of these people who wouldn't support Kamala Harris because of Gaza. We're going to have Gaza on our own continent. Congratulations, folks. Moving on. The Epstein shutdown is going on its fourth week. Mike Johnson's Epstein vacation is allowing him to continue to not swear in a duly elected member of Congress in order to prevent the release of the Epstein files. And if somebody tells you it's the Dem shutdown and the Republicans are promising to work on health care, if only the Dems will vote to open the government, ask them why the House isn't working on it now instead of not working for 67 out of the last 90 days. With nothing to do, apparently, they could be getting legislation ready for when or if the House opens again. Or maybe they could be using some of that time for congressional oversight on the destruction of the East Wing and planned replacement with a Nazi monument. come back tomorrow to hear my justification for why I'm calling it that. Speaking of Congress not working, both metaphorically and literally, those geniuses running Congress, and by geniuses I'm talking about the radical right Republicans with tongue firmly in cheek, are allowing SNAP benefits to lapse on the day before Election Day. Now, we could talk about the whole SNAP benefits and the implications and all that. We could talk about that all day, all week. But I have to wonder what the Republican Party faithful are thinking of such a colossal strategic blunder. Hey guys, we're taking away all of your food. Now go vote for us. Brilliant. And now, Martin sent me an email and brought up an interesting question. First, he brought up the point of how the Nazis were always stealing and extorting the valuables of the Jewish people and their other victims in Hitler's Germany. Then he asked if anybody is checking up to see if our Gestapo is doing similar things. I think that's a fair question. What happens to the personal property of people snatched up by ICE? Their cell phones, their car keys, any money that's in their wallets, any jewelry they're wearing. If somebody is about to get snatched and nobody is looking, will they take a bribe to go away? I mean, we already know that DHS is scraping the bottom of the barrel to find people willing to be their Gestapo agents. This administration has made no secret of their willingness to ignore the law, and they fired most of the people whose job it is to be their watchdog. So I think those are fair questions to ask. Martin also asks, how can the resistance be better organized and more forceful when we don't even know who we're talking to or who we can trust, especially this far into rising authoritarianism? Well, Martin, I've said it many times and I'll say it again. The strongest possible organized resistance lies in people like you and me getting involved in reforming the Democratic Party, because the infrastructure is already there. It was the party of the working class once upon a time, but their focus shifted to protecting Wall Street, and that left the door wide open for fascism to step in. When we, the working class, retake our party, we'll have the tools and the power to fight off authoritarianism. And that's a great segue because it relates to the title topic of this episode, A Tale of Two Dinners. Now, the two dinners I'm going to discuss are both here in Colorado. They both happened last weekend. But I believe the moral of the story at the end of it can have meaning anywhere in America. This past weekend, my local Democratic Party had our annual fundraising dinner. It was on our calendar and on the state party calendar for a very long time. And still, the state party decided to have their dinner on the same night, 200 miles north of here. Ours was scheduled first. There was a deliberate choice by our consultant-ran state party. They could have held their dinner a week before or a week after ours. But the chair, did I mention he's a consultant? In his private life outside of the party, he runs a consulting firm. He decided to have it at the same time as ours. For those of you who are unfamiliar with these events, candidates who want a caucus or primary next year show up at these dinners. It gives them an opportunity to do a lot of one-on-one interacting with the voters. It gives the voters an opportunity to get FaceTime with elected officials and future elected officials. It also helps local parties raise money for get out the vote efforts in next year's election. It really, really does benefit everybody involved. In addition to the one-to-one interactions, any candidate who shows up, at least at ours, any candidate who shows up gets to take the stage and talk to the audience. In Denver, they probably heard, 20 or 30 candidates, maybe even more. Most of them were limited to 1 or 2 minutes. And there were enough of them that nobody remembers anything any of them said. We had a total of 7 candidates speak, and they were not limited on their time. They had some memorable things to say. Joseph Mestis, a future guest on this podcast and a county clerk candidate. Again, one of the most important elections to participate in next year. I mean, they're all important, but make sure your county clerk candidates are not MAGA-loving, conspiracy theory, Tina Peters-loving types who don't believe in our election system. That's crucial. They are the first step to having solid elections. Anyway, I digress. Joseph told us about his qualifications, but he was also able to educate us a bit about mail-in voting in a way that was very relatable and easy to understand. I'm going to show you now. I'm going to put a short clip of his presentation.
Mail ballots have two wonderful things. It does take voter IDs to even get a ballot. And then most people don't realize one important thing that I always want to point out. They are signature verified by a pair of judges, one from each side, and the signature has to match or it's returned. And you can cure that ballot, but there's a lot of great things to mail elections that people don't realize, and there's a lot of disinformation on that topic.
So that was Joseph Mestis, our local county clerk candidate. He was the deputy county clerk until the current MAGA clerk got elected, and the very first thing that she did was to fire him. The only guy in the office who had all of the experience necessary to run safe and secure and thorough, legitimate elections. And of course, last year in the election, she screwed up a bunch of stuff. Anyway, where was I? One of our keynote speakers was Tricia Calvarese. She doesn't have any voters here, but she doesn't have any voters in Denver either. She chose our dinner because she's a true Main Street Democrat that picks people over party establishment. And you can bet that when we talk to our friends and neighbors in our neighboring counties, and we do, we'll share our impressions. Side note, Tricia was supposed to be my guest this week, but we couldn't get our logistics to line up with each other. So here is a 47-second clip from what Tricia had to say.
I am here today because I am fighting for the promise of America's middle class, that every town with a stoplight and a grain elevator matters, that our rural hospitals must stay open, that no one in the bountiful state of Colorado should go hungry, and that starvation never be used as a weapon, not here, not in Gaza, not in Ukraine, not anywhere, that farmers and ranchers keep and prosper on their land, and that a job well done can still support a family. I believe all that because I believe in the people who make this country grow. Our civil servants who are under attack and working without pay, our tradespeople, truck drivers, postal workers, first responders, teachers, care providers. They deserve a union if they want, and they deserve representatives who work as hard as they do.
Yeah, the sound wasn't great on that one. I've cleaned it up as much as I could. So who else did we have? Let's see. We had John Migos, one of the several candidates for state treasurer, which is going to prove to be a very important office in the coming years. Now, we haven't heard bupkis from his opponents. They didn't send anybody down to talk to us, but this was his second visit to come and see us. I can't even tell you who his opponents are, because I guess that we're just not important enough out here in the rural areas. And let's see, here's 51 seconds from John.
Small Wall Street banks. I want to flip that paradigm. We need to be establishing depository relationships with local community banks, with local savings and loans, and with local nonprofit credit unions. Because here's the deal. Big banks lend to big corporations, and community banks and nonprofit credit unions lend locally. We ought to be banking with institutions that are working locally. And we ought to use that as a mechanism to drive small business lending throughout our state. with particular emphasis on communities within our state that have not had access to capital, both rural and urban.
That was John Mikos, who is now my favorite candidate for state treasurer in Colorado. William Moses, a gubernatorial candidate, introduced himself. I don't have any good video of him. It didn't come out well. Our candidate for Congress chose his voters over the establishment. That's Alex Keloff. We were wondering if we were even going to get a candidate in this race. It's the district that Lauren Boebert used to represent, and now we've got John Hurd, or who's heard of John Hurd, because we can't find this guy anywhere. He's spent the last year pretty much avoiding the voters. He talks a good game when you get him in front of a Republican closed crowd, but he's not doing the town hall. He's just like all the other coward Republicans. This guy didn't grow up rich. He wasn't handed a silver spoon when he was a baby. He was raised in a working class family, and he's now giving back. Here's 30 seconds from him.
I also had never been involved in politics until this last election in November, and it was a wake-up call for me to decide to get involved. And truly at the time, I wasn't sure what that meant, other than I knew I had to stand up and fight. We need innovative ways of creating these good jobs, which will also lower the cost of living. Housing costs are outrageous. We need more housing supply. But we also need to shore up our roads and bridges. We need to make sure our dams and reservoirs are sound, particularly where water is so important in this district.
And finally, U.S. Senate candidate Karen Breslin. This is also her second visit. Her opponent, Jurassic John Hickenlooper, he's 73 years old, was at the establishment thing hanging out with Eileen Laubacher, the carpetbagger opponent of Tricia Calvarisi. That's not too surprising, really. I don't think they could find our little rural community with a GPS. And while we're hearing Karen Breslin speak with passion, Jurassic John and Eileen were probably counting cash from their cross-endorsement / fundraising text that they sent out a day or two ago. Because, you know, that's what establishment candidates do. Here's this one's a little longer from Karen.
I'm a political science professor. I've been doing that for a long time. I worked for 25 years for the National Park Service. I was a reporter covering Congress and the executive branch. And I'm a lawyer. And all of these experiences have led me to certain conclusions at this moment in our history. It is our time to defend our democracy.
Yeah.
Fascism is on the march in this country, and it has multiple faces. Christian nationalism, techno-feudalism, white supremacy, all of it. But what I know as a political science professor, as a federal employee, as a lawyer, that if we don't stand against fascism right now, we're going to lose this country and all that it has stood for and can stand for. Because let's face it, our democracy is a work in progress. It's never been perfect, right? And it's very fragile. And the thing that we ignore sometimes is that concentrated power doesn't want democracy. Concentrated power, large corporate power, the oligarchs, the billionaires, they want to control it all. And they've gotten most of their way for about the last 40 to 50 years. Why are we struggling so much? Because they control Congress. They absolutely control Congress.
That was just a minute and a half of Karen's speech. I wish I could have put the whole thing in here, but that would have made this episode too long. And it would have made it all about her, and it would have kept me from getting to my point, which I'm about to do, by the way. Let me circle back to Martin's question and why this tale of two dinners is relevant to you. Martin asked how the resistance can be better organized and more forceful when we don't even know who we're talking to or who we can trust. And I replied that the answer lies in getting involved in local Democratic Party politics. Martin, and anybody else that's listening, because I'm involved in the party, despite my deep anger and distrust with and of the state and national parties, Despite that, I'm involved. And because I'm involved, I get to meet or get reacquainted with others in my community who want the same political things that I do. Because I'm involved, I get to have informal and personal communications with candidates, and I get to form my own opinions of them. I get to learn who I feel I can trust. Because I'm involved with my local party, I get to communicate what I've learned with others who couldn't be there or didn't choose to be there. Right now, the activity of the Democratic Party is concentrated in big cities and heavily influenced by wealthy, so-called centrist Democrats, what I call the Republican light Wall Street Democrats. If enough of us in the smaller cities and the small towns and rural America will get involved, if enough people in the big cities who have tuned out to the big city oligarchs running the big city parties, if we will all get involved, even if that involvement is no more than going to party picnics where you can see and meet these candidates and meet other people like you, if we would do that, then the Democratic Party can once again be the Main Street party and be a bulwark against authoritarianism like it used to be. Now, two things before I go. Thing one, Election Day is next Tuesday. Vote. In California, vote for Prop 50. That's the redistricting. In Colorado, vote for LL and MM so that we can feed school kids. And it's going to put a tiny little tax on wealthy people. In Pennsylvania, get out there and vote to protect your Supreme Court and the democracy in your state. Everywhere, vote for your school boards and your city councils and every position that you have to vote on. Vote like our democracy depends on it, because it does. Thing two, I want to say thanks. Can you see that? There you go. For the audio listeners, I am holding up my silver plaque from YouTube for passing 100,000 subscribers. I'm kind of proud of it, and I'm pretty sure it's going to look good next to the leftover screws from my barn dominium project or somewhere. Maybe I'll hang it on the wall behind me in my other podcast view. But 100,000 subscribers, and I want to thank all of the people on YouTube who have subscribed to my channel, as well as my Substack and TikTok and everything. But this one is about the my YouTube plaque. Thank you so much. It means a lot that so many people choose to spend a few minutes of their day with me talking about stuff that actually matters. Your feedback, the comments that you leave me mean a great deal to me, and thank you. And thank you for making me a part of your day. Good day. Well, folks, looks like we're back at the barn and it's time to call it a day. I sure do appreciate you spending your time with me. If you want to help keep this podcast going by supporting me, you can get a paid subscription on Substack, where I'm Resistor Vic. Or if you're the type that'd rather go to PayPal, I'm also resistorvic@gmail.com. Thanks again.